Everyone. So tonight, let's talk about it. Don't turn your back on Ford. Trouble and Ford updates. So we're going to be talking about the Ford Maverick. We're going to be talking, of course, about the Ford Bronco, Ford Ranger, Ford Mustang, that incredibly famous 10-speed transmission, and the, for some reason, infamous 2.7 liter. We'll also be talking about Bronco transfer cases, as well as Bronco differentials. So my friend Dave over at All Terrain Nation, Dave and Kelly just did an interview earlier this afternoon. You'll want to catch that after the show, and also they're on live at 9 p.m. And they're going to be talking about a blown differential and how that went. So we'll also in this show be talking about recalls. Now, we'll do some BS busting and do some important don't be fooled information now. I've got my old co-host back in the house because Lily has gone off to the vet. So Marie, this was the only time that Marie could get an appointment with the vet scheduled quite a while ago. So the vet in our area is extremely booked. And as such, Lily and Marie are off the show tonight, but we've got our traditional co-host, Winston. Thank you, Ridgeview, for introducing and welcoming Winston to the show. So I'm going to do my best to answer questions this evening, but I don't have Marie, the incredible assistant that she is, to make sure we don't miss any questions. Now, you can see we're both wearing our bow ties because this is serious business. First of all, there's a recent recall that has just come out. Now, let me open that right up. And you're gonna see it pop up at some point on the forums, and you're gonna hear comments, just like Dave on All Terrain Nation. He got a comment from one person saying, like, thank goodness I never got a Bronco, what garbage. People sometimes will react for various motivations, various reasons, and forget that there's problems for every single model from every single manufacturer. The important question is, how serious is the problem? For Teslas, and I don't know if their problem's resolved right away, but they actually have a high number of paint issues. Or if you think back to certain year Honda Civics, a beloved vehicle in my nation, a vehicle that's was a number one seller for many, many years in regards to automobiles. The F-150 is still the reigning champ, 56 years of being the best-selling automobile. But when looking at just cars, the Honda Civic sells incredibly well. And there is a whole slew of years where the clear coat and paint just couldn't stay on that car. So it's all about percentages. Before you say something's horrible and you're glad you didn't get it, think about that percentage. How many people are affected, and also how big of a problem is it? If you have, we'll get to talking about the 2.7 liter, but let's just focus in on this current recall. There's a compliance recall 22C27. It's a demonstration / delivery hold. So pretty annoying if you've been waiting on your Bronco for maybe a year and a half, and finally it shows up at your dealer and they can't deliver it. That is what a delivery hold means. I had it occur just recently on an F-150. I believe because of lights in the front, there's a possibility that the daytime running lights don't turn on. And because this is considered a serious safety issue, even though back in the 70s no one had daytime running lights, and cars were so many-fold more dangerous. There's many more fatalities in car accidents at much slower speeds than you see these days. But as such, apparently daytime running lights cannot deliver the vehicle. But here's the thing. I have experience at Ford, and I can tell you, just like when there was a delivery hold on Mach-E Mustangs last June, and I was saying, hey, look, they're talking about, I think originally it was looking at maybe 2 to 3 months to resolve it. It was resolved in 2 to 3 weeks. Ford is on top of these things. Ford does a lot of recalls by choice. Ford doesn't want to be covered. Ford today is not a company that hides and camouflages and does everything to pretend like they don't know an issue exists and have to be forced to bring these repairs about, which makes me think, for example, governments and people had to really chase after Hyundai and Kia to finally add warranty to some of their very problematic 4 cylinders. And that was actually an engine with a reasonably high percentage rate of, bad engines. So I hope you all can hear me. If ever you can't hear me, just let me know in the comments section. So yes, 2021 and 2022 Ford Broncos, some of them, it says it's an accessory protocol interface module software update, and it is causing a delivery hold. I have faith this is going to be resolved in probably 2 to 3 weeks. In the case of the F-150, Ford is saying that they should have a solution for January, which is, about a month, mid-January would be a month away. So let's find out if it takes them 2 weeks or 6 weeks to get this done on the F-150. And on the Bronco, I wouldn't be surprised if this is actually resolved within 2 to 3 weeks. Now, let's just cover the general important must-know information. I know a lot of you on the channel, you're still waiting on your vehicle. We're waiting on an F-150, still on a microchip hold. ETA, finally, we got an ETA saying between right around the end of December. Our Maverick got pushed back 1 week and has an ETA for February 14th to the 18th. So it looks like it's going to be the little love truck, maybe come in on Valentine's Day if it doesn't get delayed. But if you're Maverick, like ours, gets delayed by a week, it does not automatically mean it's going to be delayed by a month or many months. You do have your rare occurrences of some very serious problems, but let's not just assume every time something goes wrong that it's going to happen to a huge majority. The Bronco isn't junk because, for example, our transfer case, little programming thing, it got kind of it stayed partially engaged, and it made it so at slow speeds we were hopping along, and without enough gas it would just actually slow down. Maybe long term that could have had some serious issues, but just a programming issue. We did cover on the show earlier about a month ago. We had Dave on the show telling us about another Dave Z, who had his transfer case blow. Now, that was unfortunate. We talked all about that. I think that not being warranted had a lot to do with that particular dealership. And if you do watch, please watch Dave's show that just came out today. He's covering a differential where it is covered. Normally, Ford really does cover these things, but the dealership needs to be willing to put in the request. Dealerships do need to stay within certain parameters, so you just hope that you aren't doing business with a dealership that throughout the year has been, giving out, free motors and transmissions to people who drag race. So then at the end of the year, they're just way out of budget, way out of the parameters, and start saying no when they should have said no earlier to some other people and should be saying yes to people now. So it is kind of like a yearly budget time framing. So overall, Fords are pretty reliable. You look at the Vincentric 2022 Best CPO Value Award, and that means, it's an award looking at operating cost, fuel, insurance, total ownership costs, and well, the F-150 continues to completely rock it. Expedition as well joining that for the large SUV category, and the Transit Connect is also for the small commercial passenger vans is also a winner. The Ford Escape PHEV took honors in the Lincoln, one of the Lincolns, I won't get into it, but one of the Lincolns, if I recall, it was the Aviator, was also really highly ranked. Generally, Fords are reliable, but no matter what model you're looking on the market today, you're going to hear problems. And there's going to be problems. Just like the 2.7 liter, there is 50 some reported by the NHTSA engines that broke because of a valve issue, bad valves, created an issue, and now you've got, this complete attitude by many that the Bronco is awful with a 2.7 liter because it's not reliable, and that just isn't the case. But let's get more onto that 2.7 liter and some Maverick talk in just a moment. Let's talk about some important news I want to get out of the way. Scheduling this week. So if you're like me and Marie and you're waiting on a vehicle, do know that you'll want to check your emails because scheduling this week will be Broncos, Bronco Sports, Econolines, Escapes, Expeditions, Explorer, F-150, and we also have Mavericks, medium truck, Mustang, Ranger, and Super Duty. Now, do keep in mind for the Ranger, that's the current model. So if you don't like how the current model looks, if you're not a big fan of it, or you want to hold back for what probably, the new model Ranger is going to probably be coming out. Dealers we were advised, Ford told us, do expect a 2.7 liter twin turbo V6. And that's not a problematic engine. 50 some reported cases, maybe 60 in total, 60 some, but very few engines due to bad valves. They've made hundreds of thousands of these across F-150s, Rangers, Lincolns. It is incredible setup. Just how the 10-speed transmission is a pretty darn good transmission. We'll get into that into a bit, but I have shown pictures in the past of a 10-speed transmission that was blown. Particular rare instances, this thing was beaten on a little and as such there were some issues, but this doesn't mean, if you come across blown 10 speed on the internet and a few people have had the problem, it doesn't automatically mean that we're talking about a bad transmission. Just like that 2.7 liter, which I find is actually far superior than the 6-cylinder from Jeep, and we'll also talk about that in tonight's show as well. So we'll talk about the Jeep here. I'm going to be doing a little show, a premiere coming up. I'm going to be building both a 4xe or 4xe Jeep because I think that is actually a reason to look at buying a Jeep. We'll be talking about the various tops, hoping some of those tops get copied by Ford, or maybe not necessarily copied, but borrowed and improved. So competition's good. I'm not at all against Jeeps. I've come very close to buying 3 or 4 Jeeps in the past. Almost bought 2 Gladiators, almost bought a 2-door Wrangler, and almost bought, very close to buying, a 4-door Rubicon Wrangler. So I'll be talking about that in a bit in a show coming up, but we will talk about the 2.7 liter. But for the Ranger, if you do want the new Ranger, I'd say this isn't anything official, but probably one of 2 ways to get the new model Ranger. Either in spring, Ford's going to do a full North American reveal, and there'll be time to put in a reservation. So be one of the first. During the unveiling on YouTube, if they do it that way, check to see if you can reserve it. At the end, check again. The next morning, check again. And maybe they'll just say, you know what, we're going to let the dealers deal with it, and sometime in June or July, you'll go, sometime probably more May or June, you'll go down and maybe do an early order because production for the 23 Ranger is supposed to stop in July, meaning the 24, our new model. Well, we should be getting that starting to get built in July of 2023. I do really like the Ranger, and I've already come across a photo on Facebook. I'll try to open this up and share this photo. Next Gen Ranger, and guess what? You already have some people saying, good day everyone. Does anyone know what that green liquid leaking inside the hood is? Is that coolant or what? Yeah, that's, my friend, that is definitely coolant, almost certain. So he's got a stock XLT model. So it's stock. Yes, stock, sometimes things can go bad. So I'll share that right there. You can see right here, you've got your green liquid right in there, and that's coolant. And that doesn't mean the next gen Ranger is bad. Now the 2.3 liter has been around for quite some time. It's a good little engine. We had a little bit of problems with it at first in the Focus RS, and we've had it in the Mustang. It's done great service in the Mustang, great service in the Ranger. It's a strong little engine, but it's the internet. We didn't have the internet 20 years ago, so something had to be. We had the internet, but people, we weren't all on it and obsessed with it. But, in the 80s and 90s, for something to get a bad reputation, it had to be horrible. And nowadays, with the internet, for something to get a bad reputation, you have to say one or two things wrong as a human being, misspeak once or twice, you're out. Same thing for vehicles. You get 50-some, 2.7 liter twin turbo V6, an incredible engine, really powerful, love it in our Bronco, and you get a bad batch of valves that get installed, and then people get the general impression that it's just horrible. Well, that's because in the 80s and 90s, for you to hear a story, it meant someone pretty much in your inner circle has had a problem. And sometimes 2 people, which meant the percentage of failure back then, for us to consider something, bad, percentage of failure was incredibly high. And now the percentage of failure can be incredibly small, and you get a bad rap. So let's just remember, data is important. Data is so important. So, I do like the Jeep. As long as you don't dress your Jeep up like this here. And I'm sorry, I am working on getting a new program for our lives, but the camera quality isn't good enough off my laptop, so I've ordered up all sorts of equipment. So we will be able to drop in photos into the lives and not use that TV, which I realize is too far away, too small. But as long as you're not dressing up your Jeep with, ridiculous black siding and ridiculous lighting, making it look like a Christmas tree, I like the Jeeps. My main problems, when you're in a corner over bumps at decent speeds, the thing tends to kind of, wobble and travel. And that's because, front axle solid. So if you hit a bump on the right side, left side, go in the bump. So if you got bad bumps and you're doing this, well, you can also do a bit of this in the corner, and that's pretty scary. So not a Baja vehicle, not like they took basically a stock Bronco and competed in the Baja, and no one flew out of the Bronco. So that's my main issue. We've got really bad roads out here. And I don't like the 6-cylinder from Jeep. I know the Pentastar, it's been around for about 12 years. It's pretty darn reliable. Jeep, if there's going to be an issue, it's going to be more in electronics or in that transmission. And Jeep owners completely ignore these, just like some Bronco owners will be like, some will completely ignore, but because it's a new product, there's a lot more negative going around than positive. So the Pentastar, for someone that likes low-end torque, likes to take off quickly, that's not the engine for you. If you do get a Jeep, let's say you're really tired of waiting for your Bronco, I personally say it's worth waiting just a little bit longer. You're so close to the finish line, and I know it's hard to believe, but most of you, if your dealership did things right and did a confirmed order verification process or procedure, you're really close to getting your Bronco, and it's totally worth the wait. The 2.3 liter inline turboed 4 is a beefy engine. It feels beefy because of that low end torque. You hit the pedal and it's instant power. Now, unless you're a pro with the standard and you really in advance know what gear to put it in to really take off, you're better off with the automatic. I didn't know what I was doing with that manual, and I felt it was kind of gutless, but it was just bad driving on my part. I've driven the 2.3 liter with the automatic. You press the pedal, it knows to drop 3-4 gears, and you just take off. And I do want to congratulate Dirk Connor, a member of our channel. Got his Everglades. Got it, started driving it, absolutely loves it. So congratulations, my friend. I will put your photo on Instagram as soon as I have a chance. Where your photo will have will give justice to your photo, because I know this does not come out well, but Eruption Green Everglades, that is a dream vehicle. So generally, Jeep, if you're gonna get a Jeep because you're tired of waiting, I do highly recommend the 4xe. That's the 4xe. It's gonna start at about 55,000 US, but really worth it because you've got about 21 miles of all electric driving. Or just don't force it to be electric and just get really good fuel economy. Now, if you don't care whatsoever about fuel economy and you want just a wild ride, go with the 392. That 6.4 liter Hemi engine is an insane piece of machinery. It's a blast. And do recall, some have blown. I believe Light Bright Nation, they had an issue with their first 392. They're not perfect either. But the sound's going to be incredible. The fuel economy is going to be bad, and you almost have promised fun. It's miles per gallon on that machine. You shouldn't be measuring or calculating what you're going to be paying for fuel, but miles per gallon, the smiles are going to be really high, but you're going to be dropping a gallon of fuel pretty often. But that is a complete blast. Personally, if I were to get a Jeep, there's incredible torque out of the 4xe system, so their plug-in is a wonder. And I really do hope, Ford, you do produce a plug-in very soon, attach it to the 2.3 liter, so we can compete in that realm. And I think the Bronco, with its far superior suspension, seat comfort is excellent. We drove down to Florida from up north here in Canada all the way to Outer Banks, slept, drove on the beach, spent the day driving on the beach, slept, then did the whole next day driving to Florida and actually get to Outer Banks. We got a little lost and we drove for 20 hours straight, and neither Marie or I had issues. And I have what's turning out to be a lifelong back injury because of some things that I did when I was younger, wanting to, anyways, won't get into that, but hurt my back pretty badly, and I now injure it sometimes just lifting up, 50 pounds. So I had no issues with those seats all the way down to Florida. The Jeep seats suck. The Jeep seat, it's just the only way to say it, but the Jeep does have cooler top options. So I really do hope that I hope the Jeep gets better for all you Jeepers out there, and I hope Ford sees the Jeep nonetheless as a threat, and I hope that they offer tops that are more like the Jeep. The Jeep's got this on the sides. It looks like it is a painted metal roof on the side, but in the middle it's a soft top. One touch, so electrical. So electric soft top. You get the best of both worlds. You get the easy, I want a convertible with some sun, and you get that incredible painted hard top look. And Ford, for the life of them, can't get us a painted hard top, which is originally one of the major things I wanted on my Bronco. So we got a question here. Are you planning on going south to Florida this winter? If I do, so far, it'll be on my own. But I'm tempted. I'm hoping Marie-Pierre will last minute find out she gets some time off, and either we freeze a little and only make it down to Outer Banks and spend, if she gets very limited time, we'd be in Outer Banks. But I'm hoping that F-150 Lightning bring a few, electrical appliances. I'm really hoping that I can get her out of her Hotel Princess setup and that we could just do the drive. After 15 hours of driving or so, stop, sleep at a rest area, have our little electric appliances, sort of do some concrete camping. It's happy compromise, happy wife, happy life, but I'm hoping to get a little compromise out of her. And then the next day we'd continue off to Florida, because I would love to be down in Florida. And I bet there's some people on the channel here that would maybe even want to meet up. I know last time we went down in Florida, we met up with one of the channel's viewers. We reviewed and spent time with his Maverick. We went out for dinner and we just had a really good time. Now, Myrtle Beach is somewhere that I want to try. I believe Myrtle Beach, that's South Carolina. And actually, my very first girlfriend was from South Carolina. Met at my parents' cottage, and she was visiting family at their waterfront living. Can't call it a cottage. They live there all year long. You don't get to call it a cottage if you're there 12 months out of the year. So Eugene, thank you also for the invite. So it looks like even if I go down to Florida by myself, it looks like there'll still be some fun to be had and some people to meet. So I have vacation end of January, early February. First week of February and the last 2 weeks of January. So maybe I'll see you all there. So for the Jeep, those tops, I really hope that top makes it to Ford, and at least a painted top. Jeep does have a very nice painted top, but with the painted top, let's do recall Outer Banks, didn't see really any hard top people with their driving with their tops down, including my friend Dwayne from Driven Wild Outdoors. He had his top on. Why? Well, he had the family. He needed things in the back. Us, well, he was pressuring down at the tire station. We just took our top off, and when he was pressuring up, we're like, yeah, take the hose first. And then when he was before he was done pressuring up his tires, we had the top back on, and this was only our second time doing it, so no experience. Now we're super quick at doing it. So that's that. Now let's do recall that the Bronco is sort of in its early phases. There's going to be a few issues here and there, but I think it's been faring quite well, because there haven't been any issues like, let's say, Dodge or Jeep's early 3-liter diesel, where at one point, at least in my area, the majority of them, there's more at the dealership with engine issues, not drivable at all, broken engines, than there were on the road. That is catastrophic. And that's not a reason either to avoid a Dodge or a Jeep product, but it's important to know going into it. I just don't like seeing people in our Bronco or Maverick community reacting as if something's catastrophic. So far, there haven't been catastrophic issues with the Maverick or Bronco. There have been little hiccups, a little more with the Maverick. We recall the punctured gas tanks that affected some people, the hybrid and EcoBoost potential battery cables that needed to be replaced because it could make it so that your vehicle's just not starting up. That sucks. And it's annoying. And it's unfortunate. But it's not a reason to think like, I should have never bought the Maverick. And none of these people, I ever hear them really saying, even I watched Dave's show with the interview with the individual who had the broken transfer case, that I still think doesn't make sense to me that he had to pay out of pocket. I think that's a dealership issue, not so much a Ford issue. Still hoping that later down the road, he'll be contacted by Ford. But he still wasn't saying he regrets his Bronco purchase. And little things like this, little hiccups, are going to happen with a new vehicle. Now, I am finally happy with the Jeep, by the way. I can stop, calling it the cheap. I've traditionally and historically called it, the cheap YJ and the cheap, JL and all this, because their base models were just so unbelievably cheap. And even when you went mid-range, they're just so cheap. But now the base model, the Sport, has air conditioning, and it even has a 7-inch touchscreen. So way to go, Jeep. You've now joined us in 2012. Welcome to, 10 years ago. So I think they're funny, but I do like the Jeeps. Don't get me wrong. We tease those that we love. I don't know if I love the Jeep, but I'm pretty fond for it. So 4 High 4 Low saying there is a Ford's Garage restaurant in St. Augustine. Great food. I would love to actually, if I do go down to Florida, I got to plan in advance, make sure, okay, I'm definitely going to be there that evening. And just have us, do a shout out and invite everyone and hope at least someone comes. If I'm not traveling with Marie-Pierre and I'm just eating at a restaurant by myself, I'll be a little embarrassed. I won't look for trouble. I won't dress like this eating alone at a restaurant, but I hope some of you will meet me there. Now, more information I want to cover this evening. There was a bit of Maverick talk. I'm just going to check what time it is because I can always save information for another show. But a lot of the Maverick talk I just wanted to cover were the little hiccups that we've seen. What's great is Ford has been jumping on these issues and making recalls. And do note, every time Ford makes a recall, the issue gets also corrected at the factory. So don't worry, if you hear about, whether it's the gas tank issue, whether it's the battery cable issue, or whatever Maverick or Bronco issue, don't worry, yours is going to be built fine if you're not built yet. Now, don't lose hope is, I guess, the message of this show. And just recently, we saw it in the order guide. CarBuzz covered this story saying the Maverick, a bunch of people covered the story when they said, well, it looks like for the Maverick, the second key will be depopulated, meaning you actually basically only have it as use as an actual key. You can't unlock the doors from a distance, which for some of you, not a big deal. Up north, I can say I'm not the only one that loathes removing your glove, digging into your pocket, unlocking, putting it back, and putting your glove on, because in minus 40 or 45 degree weather, and sometimes with wind chill, minus 50 or colder, your skin freezes really, really, really quickly. You end up with blue hands and cracked skin, and it's unpleasant. So anyways, Ford's doing what they can to not have the microchip issue actually affect models. So just recently, it was shared that in then they probably won't need to do this. So not to worry. And I do hope actually for the Bronco subwoofer issue, I do hope that we get our Broncos with that new extra speaker, so the 7-speaker system with subwoofer, because our Bronco sound system, now that I'm really treated by the Ford Raptor, incredible F-150 Raptor 2019, incredible machine, drives over any hole with you barely feeling anything. So in that sense, it's a bit of a tank. It's heavy, and surprisingly, the 3.5 liter high output EcoBoost engine in it, the 2.7 liter in my Bronco, I actually prefer accelerating, and if I'm in a hurry to get somewhere, I'd rather take the Bronco. But I won't be listening to tunes the way I do in the Raptor. The Raptor has a far more superior sound system. So that's another area that Ford can work on, and it's actually an area that the Jeep has. The Jeep does have a much better sound system. So let's try to keep things in perspective, not lose too much hope. People are even starting to get their Mavericks. Now, I know it's frustrating. I'm not the only one reading online of people who never had a 2022 order, who just ordered in September their 2023, and they're already getting build dates, even some complicated ones. One of our users shared right here on the channel with the community, so thank you very much. They shared that their Maverick didn't have a 2022 order, ordered a 2023, and it was an XLT Lux EcoBoost, Lariat with Lux with 4K, so that's the heavy towing package to pull 4,000 pounds, and they're already scheduled, and they're going to be built in just a matter of weeks, and that can be really frustrating. But I do want to reassure everyone that, again, is on dealers. Dealers were given the responsibility of correctly putting priority codes on people. So Ford made it really clear. Give a 10 or 11 to a carryover, and then distribute the other numbers based on, just logic. So clearly, if you're like my local dealer and you're still taking hybrid orders in February of 2022 this year, we're telling people, look, right now they're almost guaranteed not to build your vehicle, but it'll go to the 23 model. So you'll probably get it somewhere in, 12 to 16, 17 months. But nonetheless, that order was kept. And, of course, the dealership logically goes, well, if that's going to be, let's say, priority 16, well, a hybrid, that would have been, same process, but done in, let's say, June or July or August. Well, that would be a priority 19, so that we make sure Ford picks up the 10s before the 19s. Now, with constraints versus allocations, a dealer, someone that, nonetheless is, even a 19, could theoretically, under, certain circumstances, pass a 10 if the 10 is, every time Ford goes to, or for a little while when Ford goes to build that 10 and give that dealership their allocation or 10 allocations, by the time it's that person's turn, they don't have that available at the factory for when they're going to be trying to schedule it. Well, then you go to the next scheduling chance. And that's why every week I share some scheduling notes saying this is what's scheduling this week. It doesn't mean you're necessarily going to be scheduling. It just means that if your dealership has allocations, some people are going to be getting some really great news via email. Or in my case, no email, but that's why I watch the system. My Lightning, I still don't have an email from Ford saying that it's going to get built. I don't have an email saying it has been built, and I don't have an email saying it's on hold due to a microchip issue. So Ford, please become consistent on those emails, but don't be fooled. Don't avoid getting a Ford just because they don't send out emails, because a lot of manufacturers just don't send out any emails at all while you're in the whole wait and build process. Not a reason to cancel an order. Now, I believe I've covered the information I want to cover for this show. Talked about the 392 engine from Jeep, incredible 6.4 liter V8, some failure rate, sounds amazing, one heck of a ride. Still, I think overall my choice with them would be the 4xe, so that's using their 2-liter turbo with an electric engine and battery. So Ford, here's your chance. You have a 2.3-liter turbo. You just need to add it as a plug-in. And according to a head over at Volkswagen who let something slip, it would seem that, and based on different quotes from Ford, it's just a question of time before we're offered a Ranger with a 2.3-liter plug-in, as well as a Bronco with a 2.3-liter plug-in. So that is perfect. That's going to be a fully electric vehicle for me, except for when I want to step on it and use all that added on torque. And I do love the braking of plug-ins. Just like electric vehicles, they've got double braking power. You got the electric motor that helps you brake, and you have the actual brakes. So these things brake like a supercar, even though you're in an SUV. So we need that. That's going to take the Ranger and the Bronco to just another level. And I do appreciate the comment saying that Tim Bartz over at Long MacArthur Ford and Johnny over here at Johnny's Car Care and Reviews, they said in the live chat that we give you hope for your hybrid. And I can tell you, even us, we were starting to look at other vehicles, and we just kept getting back to the Maverick on its fuel economy, its price, and we're like, how can we miss out on this? How can we miss out on this? Especially that Ford is giving us, like many of you, if you're a carryover from 2022, you're getting an insanely good price on your 23 product. So you can't miss out on that. You're going to love these Mavericks. Come over here to Wilmington. I don't know where Wilmington is, but I'm going to assume it's North Carolina because I saw a little NC in your name. I'd love to explore any of those the Outer Banks areas, South Carolina, like Myrtle Beach, and Florida. All great places. Now, I'm not going to spend more time talking about other recalls because I've talked about all these recalls as they came about. So I don't want to just repeat every single recall that's occurred for the Bronco, and I don't want to repeat every single recall that's been out there for the Maverick. But I do recall myself, memory recall, that every time one of these recalls come out, there's like a downpouring of that's why I didn't get a Maverick or a Bronco. What garbage. It's going to happen with the next gen Ranger. It's going to be an incredible machine, I believe. I'm not a fan of the current Ranger all that much, but for personal reasons, look mostly wise, so it's personal, subjective. But we're going to get the same downpouring. And it's good that Ford is doing these recalls. They have the choice to just zip it and let people deal with their own problems and just always blame them. No, that's on you. Your pierced gas tank on your Maverick, you must have scraped somewhere. Too bad for you, and get to sell an extra gas tank. No, Ford's being fair with these. So I get a little fed up and a little burnt out reading every time Ford does a recall. Journalists, they're some of the worst. They get on this bandwagon. Another recall at Ford. When are they going to close up shop? And it's just like, at some point, you got to pick integrity and common sense and keeping a level head over, what's an extra few bucks in your pocket? I'm not selling my soul for a few dollars in my pocket. And sometimes my secret is when I don't like something, I just don't talk all that much about it. Mind you, if it's to protect people. So, and for example, if we go back to the Ford Focus transmission from 2014, 15, the problem started to become apparent. Well, I tell people, there's a good chance that you're going to have a little hesitation in your transmission. There is some small failure rates, low failure rates, but there's actually quite a good number of people who complain about the transmission because it acts like a manual. But if you know that it's going to act like a manual, then you need to know that because then you won't be disappointed. So, if you get a Focus, 14, 15 problem got barely noticeable for 17 and 18 before they dropped it off. Well, if you know about it and it's just natural because the transmission it's an automatic but controlled by an automated clutch, so it acts just like a manual, there's nothing to worry about. And if you like the vehicle, how it looks and whatnot, heck, my 2013 Focus, of course, I took it manual, and that was just incredible. And someone said Jeep stands for something about empty pockets. Jeep people do tend to put a ridiculous amount of money into, personalizing their vehicles, and sometimes the personalization is really respectfully done and looks great, respectful to the brand, to the heritage. Whereas other people paint it up like a worker of the night. Some of these things get really painted up, deckled out, and just look overall ridiculous. We could call it's not even biker chic. Biker chic is, anyways, I won't get into that, but it's a little term that a friend of mine invented. So I won't get into it because I'm going to get myself into trouble. Like I said at the beginning of this show, as a human being, you only have to say one or two slights and then you're out. And as a car company, well, apparently it only takes about 15 blown engines due to a bad batch of valves. And people just completely write off the whole entire model, including the 2.3 liter, different powertrain. So let's wrap up this show with a little talk on the 10-speed transmission. 10-speed transmission. GM often uses it sort of as their high-end tranny. Ford and GM, very similar because they, well, worked on it together. And the 10-speed transmission is essentially the same. It's the same design, but with varying part sizes, obviously, from a Super Duty down to an F-150. Down again to a 10-speed Ranger or a 10-speed Bronco or a 10-speed Mustang, or am I forgetting any here? The Explorer, the Aviator. 8-speed for the Corsair Escape and Edge Nautilus, but the 10-speed is used on the majority of Ford vehicles. Not just trucks, the majority of Ford vehicles. And I've personally put my hands in some dirty old oil of one that blew. And if I don't know if I can get you these photos here. I don't know if I can get them to expand. No, I can't get them to expand on that back screen because I'm out of space for that on my computer. So my apologies, but you'll have to take my word for it. 10-speed transmission overall is really high quality. It gives now. My 2019 Raptor, I'm a little dissatisfied with it because it doesn't always know where to be. So take off in the morning and when the transmission's cold, sometimes it like feels like it doesn't want to advance, and at other times I punch it down and it just doesn't accelerate enough because it doesn't kick down 3 gears. So it for 2019, I'm sure I can do a reprogramming. I've talked to people who've said, yeah, after a reprogramming, it's going to be a little bit better. But I can say for the 2022 and 23 10-speed transmission, it is absolutely fantastic. And in the Bronco 21, 10-speed in the Bronco, that transmission knows exactly where it needs to be, when it needs to be there. It's incredible. There is a learning pattern to these vehicles. There's a certain intelligence that learns how you drive. So the fact that I bought my Raptor used can be a bit of a problem too. So the reprogramming could be excellent because it's going to learn my driving habits. I like to take off quickly and then go just a little bit faster than that speed limit. But I like to get there really, really quickly. Speaking of getting things done quickly, the Toyota MR2 is finally done at the paint shop. Didn't paint the whole car, but painted a good part of it. Things looking great. It started for them every time they needed to bring it in and out of the shop. And I go to get there in slightly freezing temperatures and it wouldn't start. They brought it inside for 5 hours. It still wouldn't start. And I know this machine is, a 1991 and it's still on its original fuel pump, and it might just be a fuel pump issue, but just a recall. Everyone has their problems. I used to be a total, and I still am a pretty big Toyota fan. I've had Camrys, I've had Avalons, I've had several Celicas, I've had many MR2s, and I had different issues with basically all of them. I even had a 6-cylinder MR2, which technically it never existed from Toyota, but I took a 6-cylinder from a Camry, had it in a manual MR2, total blast, had the exhaust changed. This thing sounded like, I don't know what, maybe a Porsche, something pretty exotic. And I had electric problems, not to the level of a BMW. I had, 1 or 2 electric problems every time I had an MR2, often the alternator and, 1 or max 2 sensors. But it's all about the ratio of problems. Had that been a 1991 BMW, I bet every single sensor would have broken, and then it would have, been on a rotation. Once they were all 5 years old, one or two would have broken every single year. So keep that in mind. Let's try to keep a level head on these things. Don't give up on the Bronco. I don't think I definitely know. I'm not going to say I don't think. I'm going to make this very clear. I'm absolutely not willing to give up on either the Bronco or the Maverick. You've got good powertrains there. I'm convinced you're going to like them. Now I'm going to answer a few questions. And it was a very tight fit having a V6 in an MR2. I painted, of course, the top of the engine after, and it looked pretty sharp. So if there's any questions, now would be the time to drop them in. That's what I'm here for. Hopefully you don't stump me, because that always embarrasses me a little, but better to say I don't know than to just completely get it wrong. And if there aren't any questions this evening, well, I'm going to remind everyone that it'd be a huge helping hand to the channel, help our community grow, get us more intel if you share this content. So you can share this, send it to 1 or 2 friends via messenger or text. That's going to get the word out there. And if you haven't already done so, please do subscribe, hit that bell notification so you don't miss out on any of it's not always going to be comforting news. When I've got, bad news that's sort of unresolved, at first the Mustang Mach-E, it looked like it was going to be bad news. I was like, hey, this does have the potential to mean no deliveries for Mach-E's for 3 months. Ended up being resolved within 2 to 3 weeks. But I like to cover all that information. I like to drive these vehicles so I can give you a little hands-on experience. Like, I've test driven and spent a good amount of time in Jeeps, and I'm here for questions. I'm here for intel, so please don't miss out on any of the information. Help feed and dress those poodles, because you only saw Winston tonight, but there are 2. And until next time, I wish you all the absolute best. I hope you get more cars and more power, and that you do get to put the pedal to the metal. So we've got one question before we head out, it looks like. Marine Vet has a question. Marine Vet, thank you so much. Quite likely for your service, I would assume. And also thank you so much for becoming a member of the channel. That does really help this content get out there, because it's fun. And when I'm having fun bringing this content to you, well, I roll a 4-wheeler, I break a very expensive drone, I've broken phones that I use as camera equipment, 1 phone before. So I'm generally getting into a bit of trouble. So Marine Vet, if you could just redrop your question. John B. Meanstroke, thank you so much for writing finisher. If you do that at the end of the videos, it does help get it out there. So I'm going to try to see Marine Vet. I'll try to open this up on YouTube and get to your question. If not, you can email it to me at Johnny's Car Care and Reviews. That's Johnny, and that's the one case where it's Johnny with 1 N. So Johnny's Car Care and Reviews at gmail.com. I'm going to try to get to the YouTube show, because I was actually watching it over right on the questions popping up on the cell phone. So let's just see if we can get into this show. See if they'll let us in. So, Marine Vet, I'm going to be looking out for your question on my email. If not, once this show becomes, out of its live format and gets formatted where people can drop comments, do throw on your question, and then I'll, type it out and it'll be public to everyone. So I'm really sorry, just because I'm being a little slow, and then it will take me time to get to that question. Thankfully, I pre-apologize, saying I might not get to questions tonight because Marie's not here. Usually she, takes these little notes and gives me the look when there's a question and picks it up right off. So thanks everyone for watching. Take care, and talk to you again real soon.